I'll start with the question that has followed me for more than 20 years. What would you do if you answered a voice outside your house? And it answered back. On that night in 2002, I was alone on my property in southern Colorado, a place where the wind carries everything but never brings anything back, where, if you hear your name in the dark, it's usually just the echo messing with you. But that night, it wasn't an echo, it was someone or something calling me using my own tired, broken tone, the one that only comes out when I'm exhausted. And before you think it was a neighbor playing a prank or some animal imitating a human sound, you should know that in that part of the region there were no neighbors anywhere close, no lights from another house, nothing but fields, valleys, and black hills. I remember the exact moment when I lost control. The voice said my name a third time, shaky, like it was learning how to speak. And I, in a stupid impulse, replied, "What do you want?" And the answer came, not as repetition, not as imitation, but as conversation. Back in 2002, I lived alone on a piece of land I inherited from my father deep in southern Colorado. A simple wooden house, 2 windows that creaked with every strong gust of wind. It was isolated, but to me it was comfort. I worked as a mechanic in a small shop near the main road, and when night came, I'd return home, lock the gate, and enjoy the silence. My routine was always the same. I made a simple dinner, boiled some water, kept the radio playing low on the garage counter, and worked on the tools I brought home. Carburetors, burned-out flashlights, lawnmower engines. Sometimes I'd stay there until almost midnight, the garage door half open, letting the cold air in. That was my way of passing time. I also had a habit very few people knew about. I used a small portable recorder to jot down things I didn't want to forget. Shop notes, customer requests, parts lists, and sometimes memories of my mother, who had passed a few years earlier. Sometimes I talked to myself just to hear my own voice and remind myself that I was still there, still working, still living. Life was always peaceful, predictable. Even the little things were routine. The neighbors' dogs barked at the same hours every night like they were marking time. The wind hit the shed with that hollow sound I'd known since childhood, and whenever something broke, I knew exactly which tool to grab. But that year, something began to change slowly. First came the silence, a heavier, deeper silence, like the entire valley was listening to my footsteps. Then came the sounds that didn't belong to that place. Something walking too close to the windows, small cracks in the fence, soft knocks on the side of the house. And even then, I convinced myself it was only exhaustion. It was easier to believe that than consider any other possibility. I didn't understand yet that certain presences don't enter your life all at once. They arrive slowly, testing the ground, discovering the rhythm of your breathing before attempting their first word. The first pieces of evidence appeared so discreetly that if I hadn't lived through it, I'd say my memory was making things up. But it's not. I remember clearly the first night, things began to feel wrong. I was in the garage working on an old generator when I heard footsteps in the dirt outside. Slow, calculated footsteps, heavy enough to shift the gravel, but too light to sound like someone walking with purpose. And the worst part, they stopped exactly when I stopped. That wasn't an animal. I grew up on that land. I know the difference between a coyote and a deer, a man and a creature. This didn't match anything. The second piece of evidence was even more disturbing. One night, I accidentally left the recorder on. It stayed on the bench while I went back inside. The next day, when I hit play, I heard my own voice, but I hadn't said anything. It was a short phrase, a whisper, almost too low to understand. "You there?" But it wasn't my voice perfectly. It was like someone tried reconstructing the way I speak using loose scraps. The intonation was wrong. The breathing came at the wrong time. It sounded like an imitation made in the dark. Then came the knocks. Always 3. Always in the same exact spot on the garage wall, as if someone was marking their presence. Never strong enough to break anything, just firm enough to make the hair on my arms stand up. And then, a detail that bothers me to this day, the neighbors' dogs, which barked every night at the same hours, suddenly stopped. Completely. No barks, no warning. It was like the whole valley was holding its breath with me. The third piece of evidence was what finally stole my sleep. I was locking the garage door when I heard something say exactly what I had just murmured to myself without noticing. Tomorrow? Early? I had said that thinking about the next morning at work. The voice that answered came from behind the fence, deep, tortured, almost as if it was learning each syllable for the first time. That was when I realized it wasn't just listening, it was paying attention. After that night, everything came too close. It wasn't something happening out on the land anymore. Now it came from the windows, from the kitchen wall, from the hallway, between the living room and the bedroom. The sensation of being watched became part of the routine, like whatever it was had learned the rhythm of my life and began following it step by step. The first real approach happened one dawn when I woke up with the impression of someone walking inside the house. Slow, dragging step, but too light to have weight. I froze, listening. The sound came from the hallway, stopped, then reappeared behind my bedroom door. Once, twice, 3 times. Like it was marking presence, waiting for my reaction. I held my breath until my chest hurt, and only when everything went completely silent did I dare move. Again. The next night, it learned something else. My voice rhythm. I speak slowly when I'm tired, and sometimes I repeat words without realizing. And that was exactly the pattern I heard outside the living room window. Hey, you there? It was almost me, almost. Like someone had taken my voice apart and put it back together without understanding how it fit. But this time, something worse happened. The voice responded to the radio. I always kept that old radio playing low while I cooked. Some random music, almost just background noise, and between 2 songs the creature tried copying the host's jingle. It failed the tone, failed the timing, but the intention was there. It was using anything I heard to learn another layer of human behavior. 3 days later, as I locked the back door, I heard something impossible. The entity repeated my cough, not a generic cough, mine, with that short hitch at the end, a detail only I had. That was the moment I realized it wasn't just testing anymore. It was approaching with a purpose, trying to build a bridge, a form of dialogue. And for some reason, it was determined to use my own voice as the pathway. I spent days trying to make sense of it. At first, I did what every adult does when fear starts feeling too real. I made excuses, told myself it was exhaustion, long hours at the shop, sleepless nights, told myself the mind plays tricks when the silence is too deep, even thought maybe some teenager in the area was trying to mess with me. But none of those explanations lasted more than 2 minutes, because if it had been human, I would have heard footsteps in the dirt, seen a shadow cast by the porch light, found marks on the fence, anything, and there was nothing. Nothing but the sound and the voice. Nothing but the presence that seemed to understand my routine better than I did. One afternoon, I sat on the couch with the recorder in my hand. I thought about deleting everything, throwing it out, pretending none of it happened. But when I pressed play and heard that grotesque attempt to repeat my voice, I felt something strange. Not immediate fear, but the sensation that it wanted more, that it wasn't just imitation. It was response. I spent the night watching through the kitchen window, not admitting to myself that I was waiting for a sign. And it came. A low whistle, short, like someone calling a dog, except there was no dog there, only me. That was when I made the mistake. I opened the garage door, looked into the dark, and said the sentence I regret to this day. "If someone's there, talk to me." The silence lasted about 5 seconds. Then, from where the fence met the fallen tree, came the reply, "You talk now." It wasn't an echo, wasn't a repetition, wasn't a bad copy. It was an answer, a sentence built with intention, full of wrong pauses, misplaced breathing, but an answer. I closed the door slowly, quietly, pretending nothing had happened. But that moment crossed a line that couldn't be undone. I spoke. It answered. And now I knew without a shadow of doubt that this thing wasn't imitating. It was interacting. And if you followed the story to this point, hit that like button before things get worse. Because from here on, the story goes downhill fast. After that response, nothing went back to normal. The entire property felt different, like the night was fuller. I avoided going outside after 9 and kept all the lights on, even knowing it wouldn't help. The fear didn't come from the darkness, but from what was lurking inside it. The final approach started on a night with no wind. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when I heard the first knock. 1, 2, 3, always the same pattern, but this time on the window above the sink. Slow, deliberate. I froze. The water kept running, but it felt distant, almost muted. Then came a second sound. Breathing. Heavy, irregular breathing, like something big was leaning against the glass, trying to imitate. A human rhythm and failing. I backed into the living room, each step echoing like I was inside a tunnel. I grabbed the recorder without thinking. Instinct. Maybe some part of me wanted proof, even if I'd never show it to anyone. That's when I heard the voice again. Talk! Again. It sounded more certain, more adjusted. Like all the earlier attempts had been practice. My throat went dry. The thing began circling the house. First by the kitchen side, then the back, then closer to the front door. The sound wasn't footsteps. It was a slow dragging, like something moving with its whole body, not legs. And it always stopped exactly when I stopped, like it was mirroring me. When it reached the living room door, it did something that froze me inside. It didn't knock. It didn't call. Instead, using my exact voice, my tired end-of-day voice, it repeated a phrase I had said hours earlier while fixing a flashlight. I'm tired. You know? Perfect. Too perfect. Even the sigh at the end was identical. I took 2 steps back. The thing answered with 2 slow drags forward. My whole body shook, but I couldn't look away from the door, waiting for it to bend inward at any moment. And then it spoke. Not imitated. Spoke. Let me see you. Each word with a wrong pause, but clear. Intentional, like it expected me to open the door. That was when I understood. It wasn't curiosity. It was approach. Invitation. Encirclement. When I heard that let me see you, my body reacted. Before my mind understood, my legs went weak and I backed into the hallway doorway. I knew that if that thing got inside, I had no chance. I can't explain why. It wasn't a direct threat. It was worse. It was the sense that it was ready for me, like every minute of the last few weeks had been practice. The door made a short, dry sound, like something heavy resting its weight against it. Then came another, long scraping, like fingers, or something shaped like fingers, sliding across. The wood, searching for a gap. My breathing turned into sounds I didn't recognize from myself. I realized the recorder was still running in my hand, capturing everything. I had to get out. I went through the kitchen, quietly opened the back door, and stepped outside. The cold air hit my face like a slap, but anything was better than staying in there. I started walking fast, then running without looking back. The gravel under my feet sounded louder than ever. That's when I heard it. Not a voice behind me, a voice beside me. Why, run! It didn't come from the house. It came from the darkness around me, from more than one point, like it wasn't just one creature, or like it could move its voice without moving its body. I kept running until I reached the old shed. I entered, locked it from the inside, shoved a cabinet against the door, hid behind the workbench, breathing hard, trying to stay quiet. But it knew exactly where I was. The sound came along the shed wall, a slow, dragging, almost curious. And then the voice spoke in a tone I will never forget. You talk. I talk, as if explaining the logic of the whole thing, as if it was simple. The shed door didn't move, no pounding, no attempt to break in, just that presence, circling slowly, studying, and then complete silence. A silence so deep it felt like a hole in the world, a silence that said, without saying, that it had stopped because it understood something about me. When I finally left the shed, hours later with the sun rising, I knew the truth nobody wants to accept. It didn't want to invade, it wanted to learn, and I was the lesson. I left that property a few weeks later, told no one anything, said only that I needed a smaller place, closer to town, sold the house quickly, too quickly, in hindsight, and took only a few boxes, tools, and the recorder. I didn't have the courage to listen to the tape for almost 20 years. It stayed in a drawer, wrapped in an old cloth, like that. Could prevent the contents from reaching me. It was only many years later, living in another state with a calmer mind, that I finally pressed play. I don't know what I expected. Maybe that everything had been exaggeration, but it wasn't. The tape was there, my voice being imitated, the wrong pauses, the effort of that thing trying to form words. And in the middle of everything, the line that cut me open. "You talk, I talk." Hearing that again made me understand that the scariest part wasn't the encirclement or the closeness or the possibility that it had been a few steps from me for weeks. What truly marked me was the feeling that that night it thought we had talked. If this story stayed with you until now, hit the like button. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to activate the bell so you don't miss the next video.